Hi, this is Scott with Specter Gear. For today's product spotlight, we're going to be taking a look at our SOP 3-point sling. SOP stands for Special Operations Patrol Sling. This is another of our 3-point slings that's been around for quite a while, actually. These were particularly popular during the initial spool up for Afghanistan and, of course, the Iraq wars. We saw quite a few sales of these going to the Marine Corps. In fact, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of about 60,000 of them we sold during that time that went overseas. So it's entirely likely if you're a veteran of the Iraq War and were a Marine, you've dealt with this sling before. The in terms of 3-point slings, if I was to name a favorite of the three different types of 3-point slings, this one would definitely be it for me. I'm really fond of this sling. It was the original sling in which the transition release buckle was applied to the design. But let me start going into the features of this. First off, I'll mention I'm not going to be talking about the attachment methods at the front or rear of the weapons because of the wide variety of weapon systems we make slings for. It would take quite a while to go through all the different ways in which this attaches. So as time goes by, we'll be doing specific videos on specific weapon systems and showing how these slings interface with those systems. But we'll just be talking about the main strap of the sling and the components involved and sort of how it works and what it's made from. To begin with, the first departure from the rest of the 3-point slings that we had made up to this point, this one uses 1.5" wide webbing. Now, even though we're only talking a 1/4 inch increase in width over the 1.25 inches, the effect is pretty dramatic in terms of how this sling actually distributes the weight on your body. It's for heavier type weapons. It's a fantastic sling, but even for the lighter type weapons like the old school Car 15 that I have right here, it's a particularly effective sling for that as well. The webbing we use is the same as the 1.25 inch. It is that Goldilocks webbing that I've talked about so much, in that it's not too thick, it's not too thin, it's not too stiff, it's not too flimsy. It's just right. It's a fantastic webbing, very soft on the edges so that it doesn't abrade your neck, but at the same time quite durable. I mentioned earlier about slings that had deployed to the Iraq War in the early 2000s. There are quite a few of those that are still in service, and guys are still using them to this day. We manufacture these slings to be rugged and last a good long time. As far as when we assemble this, every one of the stitch points that we have will feature a heavy-duty bar tack, such as at the main closure point here, on the transition release buckle, even at the 1-inch attachment points at each end, we feature heavy-duty bar tacks. And getting to those attachment points, that's another area where this significantly differs from other slings, in that some of the slings, the 1.25 inch slings for that matter, if you're using something like a stirrup rear adapter on like an AR-15, M16 fixed stock application, or a Mini 14, M1A, the webbing actually transits through the adapter. So in order to switch from one side to another, in other words, to set up for a right or a left-hand application, you have to actually disassemble the sling to run it through the adapter. This is much easier in that switching from left to right just involves undoing the webbing at each end, moving it to the other side, and simply attaching it. There may be some adapter flipping involved in the front. I'll go over that in separate videos, but as far as a sling that's very versatile to remove and install on the weapon, this one does it. The attachment points, the type of webbing we're using here is that mil-spec pocket attachment ladder system webbing that we use in all of our MOLLE applications. It's a very durable webbing. Additionally, because of the kind of coarse nature of it, it definitely locks into the tri-glides more effectively than a thinner type 17-337 webbing would. So we use it for that purpose, as well as durability as it's moving through the attachment points at the front and the rear. Now, I talked earlier about the transition release buckle, and just like the CST that I've talked about in other videos, the way this works is, and we'll go in just as I've done with the other ones and talk about the term point as it applies to a 3-point sling. When we're talking about points, we're talking about points of control that the sling exerts upon the weapon or influences upon the weapon. Your first point of control would be at the rear, and that would control the position and orientation of the buttstock of the weapon. Second point of control would be the front of the weapon, and that would control obviously the orientation and positioning of the front of the weapon. And then your third point of control is at about the 2/3 point on the body loop of the sling. And what this controls is drop. And what that means is in its forward position, the weapon should ride so that the buttstock is basically just out of the pocket, just resting high on the chest. So all you have to do is just simply bring the weapon up, lock it into the shoulder pocket, and go. But should you have to do, well, first I'll talk about it. Should you get involved in, for instance, a shooting position where you're fighting against a sling and you need more slack, the transition release buckle allows you to open this up and create more slack at the front of the weapon to give you more maneuverability. But the primary purpose of this is to create slack so that you can do a cross-shoulder transition. So if you're a right-handed shooter and you're going to pie a right-handed corner turn, as we all know, you need to get the weapon oriented to the left side of your body, because the left side of your body is what's going to penetrate that corner first. And anything you penetrate a corner with, if it's going to involve your personal human flesh, needs to have a muzzle in line with that penetration, so that if you do encounter a threat, you can engage it immediately, or you can spot it early and back off without having been seen. But the whole time you're covering down on that area with a muzzle, and you're not protruding an elbow, a leg, a shoulder, while the muzzle hasn't even cleared that plane, and you start taking fire. So critical that you know how to pie corners, critical that you have a sling system that allows you to do that effectively. And that's a stated purpose of this particular sling. And what this does, or how this is carried out, is all you do is simply undo the cam buckle on the transition release buckle. You move this to the rear, and in doing so, what happens is the body loop will open up, and this will effectively convert the sling, and I'll lock it down in that position at that point. For me, it would be about there, and this would effectively convert the sling into a single point, or rather a 1-point type sling. And that would allow you the slack to then be able to pass the buttstock over the top of the sling and move it to your offside shoulder. And you can engage, because then there's enough slack on the sling so that you have that full range of movement. And then when you need to go back to the normal default position, you just open up the cam buckle and move it right back and lock it down, and you're good to go. So it's a very effective and a very fast system to use. It's also fairly quiet. With the SOP, though, one thing I particularly like about it is that all of these parts and pieces are larger and more robust than they are on the CST. That's not to say the components on the CST are weak, but I find for me, because I have large hands, I'm able to hit this cam buckle a little more effectively. I've got a bit more of a duckbill because this is actually slightly larger. So again, it's a good fit for me. This is also, as I kind of alluded to earlier, it's a completely ambidextrous design. There's no left or right-hand configurations. It can be easily set up for a left or a right-handed shooter. It'll arrive in the package in default right-hand configuration. It's also an open circuit design, and I'm going to do a follow-up video here in just a bit where I delve more into that as far as how to adjust the sling to your body and deal with sling fitment issues and adjust the length of the sling. But what I mean by open circuit design is the final termination point to the sling is this buckle right here, your last attachment point. Because this is not sewn in, you could conceivably adjust this sling all the way down to just a very tiny little thing. You might end up with some excess webbing right here that you can easily trim and heat seal later. And again, I'll cover that in a specific video that shows you how to do that. But that's kind of the main overview of this sling. It's, again, a heavy-duty, robust design. It's particularly useful for heavier weapons such as the FNFAL, the G3, the M1A. This is a great sling for that application. It's excellent for the M16A2, designated marksman rifles, etc. Hold on. Got to do the cough. Haven't done that in a video in a while. Thought I had that kicked, but still there. Air quality's awful in California. Just thought I'd share that with you. A lot of stuff's awful in California. But having said that, that's exactly where these products are made. Right here in Visalia, California. And I'll go ahead and bring it to a close now and say that, as with, again, all of our products are manufactured here in Visalia, California. If you want more information, please visit us at www.spectergear.com. And with that, I will thank you for listening and have a great day.